Welcome to episode 108 of Trek Lab. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about some Star Trek bridges. Before we jump into that, Bill, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. Excited for this. This is sort of like an extension of a little mini series that we started a while back where we try to guess each other's favorites, which kind of adds a different element. Trying to see how well we know each other and each other's like taste and preferences with Star Trek stuff. So this one is an exciting topic because it's one that I can't say that I've spent a lot of time like trying to rank these things as much as I rank like episodes and movies. It's not one. This was like a new exercise for me to like think about the bridges in a way of like, okay, like how would I stack them in a ranking system or something. So it was a unique challenge, and it's like anything else. This is very much like a time stamped today. This is what
Preface
I think.
That for sure.
Yes. If we did the same video next week or next year, I'm sure we'd have different, maybe some different takes. But I'm really excited to see where this goes and to see if anybody's in the chat today, their opinions, their favorites. And I'm very eager to see if I have any of yours right, Dan. I think I might have a couple.
I don't think I'm going to get any of yours right, but that's okay.
Hey, you never know. This is like I said, we've done this before. We did it with captains. We ranked each other. We guessed each other's rankings for the Star Trek captains and non-captain characters.
Yes.
And I feel like they were like good first episodes for that because they were a little easier.
Yeah. This one is.
This is a deeper cut topic that we haven't spent a lot of time really talking about. The characters and captains and stuff. We've talked to each other enough over the years to have a pretty good feel, I think, for like where those things fit. But something more obscure like bridges and some of the things we're talking about maybe doing in the future, it's more of a shot in the dark as far as our guessing goes. So we'll see how close we get. And more importantly than all the guessing stuff is it's a cool opportunity to talk about Star Trek bridges. And we'll see how many we get to.
Yeah. Yep. Do you have any rewatch to report, or you just want to jump into the topic at hand?
I don't have any rewatch to report yet.
Okay.
I'm taking my good old time getting into season 3 of TNG, which is a pretty foolish decision. I should be jumping right in, but pretty soon here I'll be diving in. Hopefully next weekend I'll do some damage and knock out a good handful of episodes. What about you?
I have I'm doing my one episode a week, as I did kind of end season 1 of TOS. Started with the mock time. I like that episode. It's a great episode. Really cool way to start off season 1 or season 2. Kirk challenging his orders and maybe throwing his career down the drain, but great episode.
Yeah, it's definitely an all-time classic. I think it's I think I've said before on other topics, I think it's sort of like the quintessential episode when you think of the trio of the three main characters. I think it kind of perfectly has each of them in their places and takes the best advantage of each one of their traits and sort of their role in the show. And I think it's one of the best of not just that series, but I think of the greater whole of everything. It's got iconic music. It's got some really cool production design for the time with, the Vulcan courtyard where everything happens. It certainly lays the groundwork for Vulcan society and what makes Vulcans different from us, from humans. I think season 1 you get little tastes of it and little things here and there that establish Spock's backstory a little bit and what makes the Vulcans unique. But Mock Time is certainly the first time I think we spend a good deal of time really chewing on all the good stuff with the Vulcans. I think it's a classic, and I think it's one of the best episodes of all time, really.
Yep. All right, I think we should just jump right into the topic. Um, Before we start jumping into the graphics, because I do have some graphics. Bill, how did you put together your list? Was it like, what are the best? What are your favorites? Combination of both.
Combination of both. There's definitely a sense of it's a mix of some old school, some new school. Both kind of make appearances here, and with something like Star Trek that runs 50 years, and where there's a big range in terms of like uh, money spent. The era where the production design and the look of the sets comes from. All eras are represented, and I tried to do that by factoring in personal taste, nostalgia, personal connection, along with sort of wow factor with state of the art, impressively modern versions of Star Trek bridges. So there's a little bit of each on
no.
here.
Yeah.
So I tried to have that balance. I tried not to feel too beholden to it's got to be like most impressively built and holds up the most today. Too much, and I tried to factor that in as well, to have a balanced take. What about you? How'd you come up with
Yeah, mine was a kind of combination of both, of favorites and kind of best looking, but also I tried to look at it from two other points of view. First point of view, what would I like to serve on? What bridge could I see myself, on the bridge, working, doing something? I thought that was kind of a cool spin, and that kind of changed my list up a little bit. And then and then I really like ship design. So if I was a designer, how would I lay this bridge out, and kind of that aspect as a design standpoint. So that came
that definitely
that came
that
into
gives
factor
you a different
too.
that gives you a different angle. Like I can't say that and that makes perfect sense because you are somebody who does do graphic design, and your brain works that way, and you get to exercise those muscles. So you got to look at it from the perspective of the design side of things, and what would you do, and what sort of matches your own personal aesthetic when it comes to like production design, set design, graphic design. So that's pretty cool. I think we have two similar ways of looking at it, but I think we have different things that we bring to the table too. You're obviously somebody who doesn't necessarily have like the 30 years of watching it going back day in day out from when you're a little kid. It brings a lot of nostalgic stuff that's kind of tough to pull away from, and you do have a design sensibility that I really don't. So there's enough there that I think makes our lists maybe a little different.
All right, I guess without further ado, let's get into it. I figured we would go through the lists. I'll have Bill send me his, then I can update the graphics and then put it back into here because I don't have his stuff. It's just mine. And then we kind of talk about our individual picks and how wrong mine are. So without further ado, let's go. I'll name mine off right off the bat. Hopefully you can hear us. Maybe Bill give us a clap to make sure I can see. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're good. Cool. All right, so starting at number 5, for me, I picked Deep Space Nine, the Ops.
Okay.
I have a thing for tables, so I think when you in a team aspect and you getting stuff done, you could argue that maybe this isn't a bridge, but I just like this because of the table and it feels like a great work environment. There's a bunch of consoles kind of around this kind of center thing. It's awesome. And then number 4, specifically season 4 of Enterprise, with the blue carpet and kind of the updated. I don't know. I just feel like they really lit that set a lot better in the later seasons. So I guess I would say later seasons Enterprise. For me, looks gorgeous. This is the controversial one here. I have the Discovery era Enterprise Constitution class bridge. So I picked this over the classic era TOS bridge, because this bridge is so beautifully done. It's so shiny. It's so new. It's so awesome. So it had to be on my list. Um, Number two, the Galaxy class. I didn't want to lump in the Enterprise because there's the Victory and a bunch of other Galaxy class ships. So
Sure.
the Galaxy class. What can I say? There was this podcast on the Tricorder Transmissions, I think, that was called The Hilton in Space, and I can't put it any better. It's so luxurious, but it's also so beautifully designed to get work done and have the different levels of crew on the bridge. Um, and then Voyager as my number one. You guys probably could have seen that coming. Um, I love the futuristic feel, but I also love the layout of it. Again, it's got that layered kind of effect, kind of like that 3 tiers of the helm, command, and then kind of the operations, tactical stuff behind it, similar to the Galaxy class. So, but it's also the feel. It feels big. To me, in some shots, it almost feels bigger than the Galaxy class bridge. So I'm all about that. So I love it. That's my list. I'll go over my guess for Bill. It should be okay. Number 5 for Bill, I guess the Kelvin era Enterprise.
Okay.
Number 4, the Defiant Bridge. That's from Deep Space Nine. Number 3, NX-01 Bridge. Number 2, Galaxy class. And number 1, the classic era Constitution class from TOS.
So you got. Can I tell you how many you got right at this point, or should I just tell you?
Yes, just tell me.
We don't-
Let me just give me a second here.
Sure.
And then okay, there we are. All right, I'm good to go.
Cool.
I say you should start with your number 5.
My personal number 5, like my list.
Yes.
Okay. So my list. You got 2 of the 5 right.
Okay.
Which, but you nailed everything pretty much in my honorable mentions for sure.
Okay.
So my number 5 is the NX-01 bridge, and just like you, I would couch that in saying that specifically, it's like the season 4 lighting, it's the season 4 redress of it.
Yeah.
That's why it's at number 5 and not higher. If the show looked like that earlier from from the get go, I think I might
be higher.
It might end up being even higher. Yeah. I think early on, it certainly achieves the goal of looking more. The clear goal of the show was to make it more submarine, more primitive, more clunky. Yeah. And the show definitely, I think, achieves that. But I think seeing what they did in season 4 really ups the ante and gives the bridge a lot more life, a little bit more color. It feels more like a working place. That I think it. I don't want to say it feels like a missed opportunity, but it really does make me wish there was more content with the bridge looking that way.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that makes me very sad that there's not more Enterprise, because I love the look of season 4 so much, with the bridge specifically. So that's my number 5. My number 4, I actually went with a little bit of a deep cut, so I'm not surprised you didn't get this. I went with the Bird of Prey bridge, the Klingon Bird of Prey that's used in like TNG episodes, DS9 episodes. You see it.
Yeah.
I love the metallic, the very. It almost feels like it's like rusted out.
Yeah.
Very. There's grates everywhere.
Yeah.
You hear like the boots hitting metal every time anybody takes a step. Like I love the aesthetic of that. I think it really speaks Klingon in an appropriate way for how the Klingons are portrayed in those shows. In contrast to what we see in
TOS.
well, in contrast to like the Enterprise D or the Defiant, Deep Space Nine, like it's such a different take on sort of the same concept. You know, it's got the same. It clearly comes from the same universe. Like the bridge works in a lot of the same ways that like Federation ship bridge would, but it has a unique, undeniably Klingon overlay. I love the graphic design of the Klingon consoles and the sort of red and orange that's kind of sort of everywhere on those bridges. The bold red lights. Mm-hmm. So I like that set a lot. I'm definitely a fan.
Yeah, it's really,
and it's unlike.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's used a lot too. So like, there's a lot of things you could go with as like one-off things that are neat and cool. But the Bird of Prey bridge, they got their money's worth out of it. They used it a lot. Made slight changes to it over the years. It never quite looks exactly the same, but it feels visited enough where I feel good enough putting it on a list like this.
Okay.
What were you gonna say?
It's really. I think it's. You kind of hit the nail on the head. It's very fitting for the Klingons. It's really dark and dingy and menacing, and I think that's Klingons in a nutshell. So I think it really fits for sure.
Definitely. My number 3, I went with the Voyager set, Voyager Bridge, which is your number 1.
Yep.
And to echo you, I love the size of it. I love the fact that it's not. It takes a different approach. It's more horizontal than deep. Like the TNG bridge, I think of as like deeper. It sort of goes up. It's vertical. Where the Voyager bridge is long. And I love a lot of the consoles on the Voyager bridge. I love that they feel like cubicles, basically. Like I feel like the operations. When you talk about like where would I want to work, I feel like Harry Kim and Tuvok and B'Elanna with her engineering station off to the side and the science station off to the side. I feel like they have like their own little working spaces, and that they're more like little cubicles than they are like I'm just going to stand here and hit buttons all day. I love that idea. You said it really well with like the 3 levels. You go down a couple steps to the helm, then the command station sort of has its own level, and then like you said, the support stations, the ops and tactical is behind. So I feel like it's very logically built. I love the metallic like silver and black, and there's some blue in there too with the lighting, with the consoles. I just like the color scheme of the bridge a lot.
It feels really elegant to me, and I think that really is similar to Voyager's really design. It's really sleek and
comfortable,
and so I think I love Voyager. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think they struck the right balance with it. Has some of the elements of, like you said, with the Galaxy class bridge, which is not on my list.
Wow, man, that was crazy. I had that at your number 2.
Yeah, you had it high.
Yeah.
And the Galaxy class ship is very high on my list of ships, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Granted, but the Galaxy class ship, like you said, is like the Hilton in space, which is what people sort of tag it all the time. And I think there's a place for that. I think it makes a whole lot of sense for a ship that's out there for a long time, with families living on it. It's designed for people to stay and live. I think Voyager has enough of that. I think it captures the necessary element of this is a place where people have to live as well as work and have to live in some degree of comfort. But it's a little more sleek. It's a little bit more business. It's a little bit more metallic and functional than the Galaxy class ship. So I think they found just the right sort of middle ground to have elements of what the Galaxy class ship sort of represents, but maybe not quite to that extreme. It's not designed for a crew to serve on it for an extended period of time, long time, with families on it, the way that the Galaxy class ship is. And I think the design of things like the bridge and other sets deeper into the ship represent that pretty well. My number 2 and my number 1 sort of go hand in hand. I did go with your number 1 choice, the Discovery era, or a Discovery version of the 1701 classic bridge.
That's your number 2.
That's my number 2.
Okay.
And my number 1 is the classic Constitution class 1701. So I put them. So you got my number 1 right.
Yeah.
And I feel like I had to lump these two sort of together. They're versions of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think the Discovery Bridge version of the 1701 Constitution class bridge is a real achievement in taking sort of the classic design and bringing it forward and making it modern while honoring, what the original intent of the set was. It doesn't change much really at all. It just sort of upscales and goes a little bigger than what it feels like the mission, what I feel like the mission should be for something like Discovery, with going back and recapturing old stuff. It's look at what they did in the old show, and what could they have done with more resources, like not a redesign, but just with more resources and more time, what could they have maybe gone to. And the Discovery Bridge on the Discovery Enterprise Bridge, I think, perfectly achieves that. So I definitely couldn't leave that off, and recency bias definitely comes into play. The fact that it's so new, and I'm watching the Discovery Season 2 Blu-ray here and there now, so it's on the mind for sure. And then the original 1701 Bridge is sort of what sets the tone for the whole thing. It establishes what a Star Trek bridge is supposed to do and supposed to look like, and from the ground up, it establishes that there's a helm, there's a communication station, there's a science station, there's a captain's chair, there's a place where the engineer goes. So it establishes so much of the visual language of what it sort of defines Star Trek, that I couldn't not do it. And I think, if I'm being completely honest, when I close my eyes and think about Star Trek, the first thing that sort of pops into my head is Kirk sitting in his captain's chair from TOS. Like, that is the image and the visual motif of Star Trek for me that is the most dominant and will be forever. So I could not put that at number one. Like I said early in the show, when we were talking about how we kind of designed the list, it's clearly the least impressive from a wow, look at the construction of that set, and look how real it feels and how big it is. Like it's not that. It is extremely impressive, and it is an amazing design. But it's also the oldest of anything you could choose, really. But I think it stood the test of time and is important enough that I feel really good about putting it at number one.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what were your guesses for me?
My guesses for you, I had the original 1701 Constitution class for TOS for 5.
Yeah.
Your number 4, I guessed that you would do the Galaxy class, Enterprise D. Number 3, I guessed the NX Enterprise.
Okay.
I didn't specify Season 4.
Okay.
Later seasons, as you said, NX-01. 2, I said Voyager.
Okay.
And 1, I guessed you were going to say the Disco Enterprise. I figured that would appear pretty prominently. So I got 4 of your 5.
Yeah.
Order's a little off.
Yeah. You know me too well.
I mean, I feel like I do. Know you pretty well. I didn't expect to see Ops. I love that set a lot, and I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah.
It's on my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
But as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I could easily make a case that it belongs very high on a list because it's so radically different, but sort of still serves the same purpose. Like it operates for Deep Space Nine as like the bridge set, but it's a totally different thing. There is no captain's chair. There's no real like rhyme or reason to where people sit the way that they usually do on a bridge on a Star Trek show. It's a little bit more, like you said, it's like a conference room in the middle of a big working.
But it's got
center.
It's so radically different from anything that I put on my list. I just felt like it did feel like a command center, but I love the kind of how it's kind of structured. It's like Cisco's office is kind of above everyone else, so it's kind of playing with that I don't know, that kind of dynamic with I don't know.
The dominance of the commander.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from the
there's
previous
a definite.
occupants. If you catch my drift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure, and it's the set that I think maybe it's the set I'd be the most excited to. Like if I could walk onto any of these sets and just kind of walk around and look at it. I think the op set, because there's so many like nooks and crannies to it, and like
there's a lot going on.
little staircases going down to little different consoles, and there's an upper level, there's a lower level. You got Cisco's office, like you said, that elevator off to the side that gets you used the little turbo lift.
Yeah.
Open turbo lift is really cool.
It's got a table.
So
I have a thing for tables.
It's got that
because I
huge
have Enterprise
table.
Enterprise has a table as well.
Has a table.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, because I think it just really feels like a command center where things can get done. And if you guys remember, I talked about, hey, if I was wanting to serve on this is where it would feel. It would feel really. I don't know. It's just nice to be able to serve in such a command center-esque, feeling, working with your colleagues, right next to each other.
Yeah.
So,
and you do see that. I think a lot of the time in Deep Space Nine when they're on in ops, in sort of tense situations, you'll see them sort of. It does create maybe a little bit more of a collaborative environment where people are looking at each other and they're working together. It's got a different vibe for sure, and I think the design is aimed at different things, like operationally for what sets how the command center is supposed to run, than what we're used to seeing on say the bridge of the Enterprise or the bridge of the Voyager. So on that level, and I think it should be. It's a space station. It's a completely different culture that built this thing. It's designed as like a mining station. It's not a ship, going out deep into space, exploring the set like distinct command structure. This is a whole different animal. So that's one of the great things about Deep Space Nine. That it's seeing the Starfleet crew sort of having to adapt and operate in this completely different environment. And I think the ops bridge really makes that very clear very early in the show. This is an unusual place they're in.
Yeah. Couple things. I think that it's really important to have a good bridge, because especially, if you're making first contact, if you're doing some, just anything, that's when the view screen comes on, that's what you're going to see. So I think there is a sense of importance to having a really balanced and cool bridge.
Functional bridge. Yeah.
Also,
yeah, definitely.
One more thing, real quick. Just I feel like there is a sense of how the bridge is laid out. There is almost like for the captain to have a committee, right? If you think of the TOS, it's Kirk's chair, and then he's surrounded by people and stuff to helping him make decisions. In his command. So I think that's also, you can see that throughout the years, from the original classic bridge to, the most recent bridge we have, which is Discovery. So,
right. Yeah, no, that's definitely the sort of motif that is the common thread that TOS sort of established, that, it's designed as like
a committee.
Yeah, almost. The captain's. Yeah, with the support surrounding him, physically surrounding him, to be able to turn the chair and get the answer you need from the person you need it from. Yeah. And they found unique ways to sort of spin off of that, moving to a place in TNG where Picard has his first officer right next to him, somebody he can consult with and talk to and get an opinion from very quickly, who's not tied up with his own duties like Spock was. Spock's doing his science stuff while still being like Kirk's go-to, like to get help or get a question answered. Riker doesn't have those ties. And then on the other side of him, he's got a counselor. He's got another person who's operating on a different level, but is a counselor. He's even more surrounded by senior officers who are there to help. And then Voyager, they shift away from that a little bit, where it's just the first officer. And they've ever since they've kind of gone back to the Kirk method with Discovery and Enterprise. But I mean, that's the cool thing about this, is that not every bridge is the same. They found, I think, successfully over the years, they've done a really nice job of keeping consistent with the sort of design aesthetic that is a constant throughout these different shows and different eras, but finding new ways to have them be a little different from each other and give each show its own personality and take advantage of the of the cast and the crew that defines each show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think each show has its own voice. Like because of it, I think when I think of voice, one of the things that pops to mind is Janeway and Chakotay kind of sitting there next to each other and having each other's backs through a problem. Like that is something that you see a lot in that show. And in TNG, there's a lot of really little scenes between Picard, Riker, and Troy. Like I think the way the bridge is designed and which characters you sort of put where and who's kind of clumped together really does like have an impact on the show and the sorts of motifs that the show always goes back to with like little scenes on the bridge. And yeah, it's a big deal.
I think that stems from Kirk and Spock and maybe Scotty on the bridge too and or the Doctor. I think that's kind of where it stems from.
Sure,
for sure.
So much of each show takes place on its bridge.
Yeah,
that the sets are incredibly important. Like it's it's really critical to the personality of the show.
Yeah,
of each individual show.
What was some tough cuts? What was some your honorable mentions that you almost had it, you wanted on there, but you just couldn't find room?
I like the Defiant bridge. I think it's sleek and extremely simple. Like it's sort of it's very similar to the Kirk bridge, the 1701.
Yeah.
But even more lean and mean than that. It's a simple circle. It's extremely tactical. Yeah. No frills. There's no sexy new wrinkles to hey, look at us. Look what we can do with designing a bridge from like the Starfleet perspective. Yeah. It's lean and mean. It's designed to do one thing.
Yeah.
People sit in their stations and they win the battle. And there's something to be said for that. And I think episodes of Deep Space Nine that largely take place on the Defiant. Many of them, I'm thinking of episodes like The Adversary and Starship Down. A lot of those episodes really do a nice job of taking advantage of the fact that the Defiant's small and confined and can be kind of claustrophobic. And the bridge even does that. I think you feel kind of closed in on that bridge, especially in contrast to like Voyager's bridge. You can put a cot on Voyager's bridge and feel comfortable sleeping there. Not so much on the Defiant bridge. No. So that was a tough cut. From the movie era, I love the bridge of the Enterprise, especially in the Undiscovered Country, Star Trek VI. I love the clock.
Yeah.
I love how functional that bridge is, like the simple little touches, like clocks everywhere. Nobody else ever thought of that. Nobody else ever goes back to it. But on like a functioning ship, everything has a clock. You gotta know time. And I just love that little touch, and I love the look of that. I think that's sort of I think that's the best movie bridge from Star Trek VI. A real deep cut that I really like is from an episode that I don't like. We've talked about it quite a bit on this show for like production reasons. The Vara bridge. That's the Species and the Disease.
Yeah,
that's got a cool bridge set that as much as I kind of don't love that episode does a really cool job of finding ways to give a unique like cinematic.
It's true.
There's cinematic stuff going on with the direction and the cinematography in that episode, and that bridge, that set where they spent a decent amount of time. It gives some cool opportunities for like moving camera and dynamic shots. So that's a set that came to mind, and I love the Shenzhou too bridge, even maybe more than I love the Discovery bridge itself. I think that's like on the bottom of the saucer section.
I love that.
I like that a lot. I like how old that set feels too. Like that's a bridge on a ship that's been out there doing it for a long time and is a little beat up. It feels worn down and aged in a way that a lot of our Star Trek shows don't necessarily feel. If you think about a lot of these Star Trek shows that we've gotten, they're all pretty pristine. Like these are ships like right out of space dock going out there doing their thing. The Shenzhou, you're jumping in like at the end of its mission where it's pretty worn down and looks like it's ready to be retired. And I really like that too. What about you? What were some of your
probably my toughest cut? I really love the USS Kelvin's bridge. I remember first seeing that. I was like, man, this feels so. It feels like an old ship. It's a classic ship. I love the little desk lights. I don't know if you guys seen a recent picture, but I just remember. I love that kind of old style era bridge.
Kelvin Bridge is great.
Yeah, the Klingon bridge, the Bird of Prey bridge was a tough cut for me as well. And yeah, I also, a lot of people knock it, but I do like the Apple Store bridge of the Enterprise on the Kelvin timeline as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's a different take. It's very futuristic and very clean and white, so it's cool.
I'll say this too about the Kelvin era bridge. I did write down the Kelvin bridge, the Kelvin era Enterprise bridge, but I did specifically even say I like the way it looks. We don't see it very long and beyond, and maybe it's contrary to what you just said. It's maybe a little less Apple in that movie. It's a little bit more colorful, a little less sleek white on that level. But maybe it's because it's there for such a short time. Like we don't spend a whole lot of time on that bridge in that movie, obviously. But that I love the look of it. I like the lighting on it. I think it feels really refreshed, and I really responded to that. Even I remember seeing the trailer, like the first trailers for Beyond, and the few shots on the bridge, being like, wow, they really did a nice job with sort of redressing it. Same bridge, obviously the same set, but it's just on the lighting and little touches around the set to give it a little bit of an extra jolt, similar like to the Enterprise and the NX Enterprise and Enterprise series Enterprise. All it is it's the same exact set. It's like a different paint job. It's some different coloring around the set. Gives it that much of a sort of new look. So. Yeah,
I almost did the Golden Gate Bridge just to mess with you, just because it was in Voyager. It was in Star Trek.
It's in Voyage Home.
Voyage Home, and then so just to mess with you. But I'm gonna go over my list, and then Bill can go over his before we kind of wrap this up, because I do see a typo in my list on the screen. So I have Deep Space Nine's Ops. I specifically NX-01 Enterprise Season 4 because that could get confusing. That's the typo there. Discovery Enterprise Bridge, beautifully remastered. Galaxy Class, and then Voyager as my number 1. So that's my top 5. So pretty good list.
For me, I have the NX-01. I didn't necessarily specify season 4, but I'll say, like I said earlier, that the reason it's 5 and maybe not a little higher is that I prefer the season 4 bridge so much. Number 4, I have the Klingon Bird of Prey set from TNG DS9 era, specifically. Number 3, Voyager. Number 2, Discovery redesign for the Enterprise. And number 1 is the classic 1701 Constitution class. So that's my 5. It's like I said at the very beginning too. This is different. I'm not gonna lie. I put this in ink and locked it down like this morning because I couldn't make up my mind on some of these things. There's a lot of tough cuts because they're all great. Like I don't have the Galaxy Class, and it doesn't even make any sense. If you ask me to be completely honest, what's my favorite ship in Star Trek? I'd say the Enterprise D is like that's my ship. But I don't have the bridge on my top 5, which seems pretty illogical to me. But that's where it sits today. Any final thoughts for you on your?
No final thoughts. I don't have any really Star Trek content. I will say that Okay. Go ahead.
Before we jump into that, I'm curious. Are there any bridges that you don't like? Are there any that you like?
That's a good question. I don't think so. There's not a lot of things I don't like in Star Trek. I can't think of, nothing's coming to mind as far as that's something that I don't like. What about you?
I kind of feel the same way. Like, don't like is probably too tough of a term. one that sort of stands out to me is like, wow, it's not even like a dislike. It's just so radically different. It's so not what we ever see before or since. Like, I'll just say, like the Star Trek 3 Klingon bridge that Christopher Lloyd's sitting in. Like that where he's like on the upper level and everybody's like in a circle around him on a lower level.
Yeah.
From like a continuity standpoint, if you want to be that kind of person, we see Klingon bridges and other iterations like prequel stuff, Enterprise, Discovery now, and then obviously stuff that comes later. That's such an anomaly. It's so different than any other version of a Klingon look that we've ever gotten before. And it's not that I don't like it. In fact, I kind of do. I think it's pretty unique and different, and certainly imposing. But it's just an oddball.
Yeah. One just came to mind. I won't say I not like, again, it's a strong word. The Sovereign class, the
Enterprise E.
Enterprise E. Not that big of a fan. It feels kind of plain to me. But that's just me. I think it's got because I have such maybe a high standard for the D, I guess, the Galaxy class bridge. So
right. Yeah, the E is. I didn't have it on my list either. I feel like it's kind of similar to Voyager in that it I think trying to play on like being a movie and cinematic. It's very wide. It's like it's very clearly built for a widescreen, anamorphic, as opposed to what TNG was built for, 4x3.
Yeah.
It's very beige. It's very. Yeah, I don't know. It never. I don't dislike it. I don't have anything against it really. I won't knock it, but it's not one that ever really comes to mind when I think of like my favorites. I prefer a lot of the movie bridges from the TOS movies, and if you really look at a lot of those movies, each bridge in each movie is a little different from the last. Like they were not afraid to adjust those sets movie to movie back then.
Yeah.
And I think I gravitate more towards those sets. If we're talking movies. Yeah. But people do love the Sovereign. I mean, I that is one thing on Twitter somebody mentioned they love that bridge, and I know just from having conversations with people that's a popular choice. So
not my cup of tea. Yeah. Yeah, I guess do you have any Star Trek content that you want to mention?
Not totally. I would just again recommend the Discovery Season 2 Blu-ray, commentary tracks, making ofs.
Yeah.
Really valuable stuff, really cool. I definitely would push people in the direction of picking that up if you have the means. If you're a Discovery fan.
Yeah. All right, I think this is probably one of my favorite kind of style structure that we do here on Trek Live. So we're definitely going to do a few more like this in the future, which will be really fun. But you guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Twitter, Facebook, Discord, all great ways to keep the Star Trek discussion going. With that being said, we'll be back. Stay tuned scheduling because we're coming up on some holiday stuff. So definitely stay tuned on Twitter for the next iteration of Trek Live. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the near future.
Soon.
Yes.